Week 5 brought us the best week of college football we have seen so far. We had 3 top 10 teams go down, and we also had game of the year in this week. So let's get into talking games. So this ended up being the game of the year by far. And it'll probably stay like that for maybe even the entire season. So let's walk through this step by step. Alabama ends up going out to a 28-0 lead. Scoring on their first 4 drives. They ran the ball. Milrow ran the ball well. He had 100 yards in the first. Ryan Williams was being productive. Giovanni Bernard, especially in short passing game and handoffs, was really, really good. And that's what Alabama's offense is. Their shot offense. They're going to either take shots or they're going to do the small intermediate stuff. And honestly, they used not the middle of the field, but they used the sidelines a lot during that 28-0 run. But my opinion on it was that versus the Georgia defense, especially when your leading guy is a freshman and a 17-year-old, that it wasn't going to work as well. And they had the athletes to stop that. And, they do have the athletes to stop that, but it wasn't working. And, clearly. And then 28-0. Then Georgia starts slowly coming back. And back in 2 picks in the first half, ends up going pretty much the entire second half, had 300-yard, 3 touchdowns until the final play of the game. And, they make this huge comeback. I think that speaks a lot on Georgia to be able to come back 28-0, down 28-0, which would have been the biggest comeback in the top 5 matchup, the biggest comeback in the entire history of Georgia, and they were going to do it versus Alabama, at Alabama. And then obviously Ryan Williams, it's incredible versus Georgia. You'd think Georgia would be the team that slows him down, not that Georgia being the team that he has his best game against. And that catch, that 75-yard touchdown is incredible. And Alabama ends up winning this game. So what does that say about Alabama? You can't again. There's a big chance, 2 big cans for both teams. Alabama, you can't let this happen again where you let teams come back on you. Because honestly, after that, you probably lose that game more times than you lose after Georgia comes back. Can't let that happen again. And Georgia, you still have Ole Miss on your schedule. You still have to go to Oxford. You still have to go to Austin, play Texas. I'm pretty 99% sure you guys play Tennessee too. It just can't happen versus any of those teams because you will lose those games again. If you can't go into Texas and even go down 14-0, let alone 28-0. So, do I expect Georgia to do that again, by the way? No, I don't. They're way too good of a team. But they have to start faster, and this is not just a problem in this game. They only scored 6 points in the first half versus Clemson. They scored 3 points in the first half versus Kentucky. So this definitely has been a problem, their first half offense. That has to be fixed because if it doesn't, Ole Miss could be a loss, Tennessee can be a loss, Texas can be a loss. I'm not saying they're going to be an 8-4 team, but if they lose 2 of the 3, 1 of the 3, and 10-2 will get you in. But if they're 9-3, we can be at risk seeing Georgia miss the playoffs. Even if they're 10-2, they could still be in like a 9 seed or an 8 seed or a 10 seed in the playoffs, which is very ideally where you don't want Georgia to be. So we'll see. And also, I'll say this. I don't think Alabama's the number 1 team in the country after this game just because of the whole comeback. I still would put Texas, but I think Alabama is firmly at 2. This game ends up being upset of the week. We had 3 top 10 teams lose, but Ole Miss, through the first 4 weeks, I know most people, including myself, hadn't watched a lot of Ole Miss football because they had played Wake, Furman, and then 2 low G5 schools. They had played nobody so far, and Wake is a nobody. They lost to Louisiana. And then the first real opponent, they go in at home at their homecoming and just fall flat on their face. 17 points. Now, Kentucky's defense, the most underrated thing of the entire season, I'd say. They gave up 31 to South Carolina. Ignore that. Just ignore that game. 30 points combined to Georgia and Ole Miss. You could have told anybody that Georgia had the number 1 offense, Ole Miss had the number 2, or vice versa, and it would have been completely reasonable. Because of how good their offensive was last year with the returning talent, would have been a completely reasonable take. And Georgia's offense obviously hasn't been great this year. And Ole Miss, will see how their offense plays the rest of their SEC schedule. But, 30 points combined for Kentucky. Kentucky's a good team. They're not a 3-2 team. They were, I hate to say it, they're playing in any other conference, they could be undefeated. And I really do think this Kentucky team is good, especially if Vandergriff is going to pass the way he didn't pass today, because he had struggled this entire year. And, 20 points isn't anything great, but Ole Miss also has a very good defense in their own right. And at the end of the day, 20 points was enough to win. And at Ole Miss, we'll see where they go from here. They have a lighter schedule in SEC standards, especially for how good they are. Yeah, they still have to go to LSU. And they still have to host Georgia. So if you win one of the two, their schedule is definitely winnable. But that's also what we said about this Kentucky team. But for Ole Miss, team that had aspirations to make the playoffs. And it seems like every year they just are so close. And this felt like the year with this team. It's a new format. And they just go out, SEC play, and just fall flat on their face. So this is another top 20 matchup that we had. And Louisville turns over the ball 3 times. Notre Dame turns over the ball 2 times. This was an unbelievably sloppy game. Really in the first half. The second half, turnovers cleaned up. 2 fumbles on kickoffs. The ball security in this game was terrible. That should go without saying, but if you watch the turnovers, they were bad. And the one interception was on a drop pass. And I still believe Louisville's a very good team, even though, because I just don't think they're going to turn over the ball like that 3 times. And if they don't, they win this game. And Notre Dame, I don't expect to turn over the ball like they did either. So I don't want to say Notre Dame's completely back. I don't. But this is a great win for Notre Dame. And again, their schedule is really light. I think this is the last ranked team they play until USC. So, again, this was kind of the one big tough task. And if they lost this game and had USC, they're probably not making the playoffs. But now they just kind of ride. They can easily ride the season to the playoffs if they end up going 10-2 with the loss to USC. They can still make the playoffs. So it's a good bounce back after the whole NIU thing. No, Arizona-Utah also felt like it came out of nowhere. We had an upset at the 12 o'clock slate, and then top 10 upset in the 10 o'clock slate. And so Arizona, we'll talk about them first in their own right. Very talented team. One of the best quarterbacks in the nation. Noah Fafita, even though he hasn't really played like that. Ted McMillan, I still would have as the number 1 receiver in the nation. They have they're very talented. Top 20 team coming into it, or just around top 20 team coming into the year. But Utah, after last week, when Kansas State lost by 32, and Oklahoma State you had beaten in their own building pretty handily, you had established yourself as the best Big 12 team. And then you come in the next week during a blackout with, Utah, Salt Lake is always hype. And you have 10 points of offense at home. Not good. I read that Utah stopped on fourth down time and see that. Anyway, and there's this whole conversation, if Cam Rising's healthy, that's really one of my main point. If Cam Rising's healthy, he's not healthy, dude. Let's just accept this fact. He missed the entirety of last year. He has missed half of this year. He's played 2.5 games. And he was supposed to come back that Oklahoma State game, and he didn't. He was supposed to. I thought it was a definite he would be back by this game. He didn't. Luckily for Utah, they go up in their bye week. And if this ends up being some bullshit where Cam Rising is on the brink the entire year, and they end up, even getting into the BYU game, huge rivalry. I'm pretty sure. I think they host it too, which is lucky for them. And Cam Rising's still not healthy. BYU may as well just be the Big 12 best team in the Big 12 right now. They're only undefeated team in the Big 12 right now. Isaiah Wilson is okay, but Cam Rising a lot better, and you can't put up 10 points a game. And in this conference, though, the two things Utah has, it's a bye week. If Cam Rising's back by the time they play Arizona State in 2 weeks, fine. It's one loss, but with the Big 12, if they lose one more game, they can still probably make the conference championship. They can still win the conference championship. That's the one thing Arizona or Utah has right now. But if Cam Rising's going to end up missing like another few weeks, it could get ugly. And then who's the best Big 12 team? Kansas State, I think, is certainly up there. I mean, that BYU loss, I think they still lose that game anyway without the 5 turnovers, but Kansas State is not turning over the ball 5 times. And is it BYU or is it Iowa State? I think those 3 teams right now, I would have the best teams in the Big 12. But if Utah's healthy, it's still definitely Utah. So it was all the bullshit from this week going around at UNLV. Backup QB comes in and UNLV drops 59. I mean, everything that happened to this program this week, with all the scrutiny, with their starting quarterback leaves, and then their backup quarterback has the best game a UNLV quarterback has had all year. And they dropped 59 points at Fresno State, who's a decently good G5 team. By the way, Michigan dropped 23 points of offense on them, just saying. UNLV is fine. I mean, I don't know if I think that goes without saying, but UNLV is fine. And I'd still have them as a number 1 G5 team, even though Boise's dominant, even though Memphis is still 4-1. Navy and Army, and then you still have like sneaky teams like Tulane is still only has 2 losses to a Power 5 team and may go undefeated the rest of the year. And James Madison, who's putting up 63 and 70 points a game at will. So again, I love talking about the G5 race. I think it's really interesting. And UNLV, they're fine. They're still in it. They're still firmly in it, and enough that I still have them as a number 1 G5 team. That's all the games I want to talk about. There's a few other games, obviously, but just don't feel worth having a big chat on. But these 5 games, I really didn't want to talk about. So yeah, thank y'all for watching. Discord's in the description below. See ya.